Hey, everybody, welcome to the Raw Side. I hope everybody's having a great Saturday. We're trying to. We got dumped on by about a whole foot of snow here in great central New York. So lucky us. Tonight, we're changing things up a bit. We are going to be talking about UFOs and all of that scientific stuff. And we have some great people popping in tonight to help us with the chit chat. One is already here, Mr. Famous Kenny Biddle, and we will add him now. Hi, Kenny. It's a pleasure to meet you face to
Hello.
face.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. Do I sound okay?
You sound great. How about
Awesome.
myself? I'm always a little stuffy.
It depends on, the environment and how long you've been talking. Sometimes
Uh,
I do a show after like 4 hours of already talking and I'm like, hey everybody, how you doing?
right, right.
Yeah,
It's pretty much me yapping all day and
yeah.
then getting on doing this at night. Thank goodness I only do it once a
Mhm.
week so far. But we'll see how it turns out. I mean, though, I just started the show not too long ago, and I've been doing paranormal investigations for over 20 years, but I never did the YouTube thing.
Okay.
So a friend of mine said you should start a channel. I said, well, okay, what the heck, I'm retired. Why not? I got nothing else better to do. So eventually I'll
Nice.
get some videos up there and have people tear them apart and see what happens. I'm ready for it.
Okay.
Actually, tonight we're Crow is supposed to be popping in too if he's feeling okay.
Okay.
Because he said he was a little under the weather, but I'm doing mostly this because of him and another person that I have come on, which is Kale Kelly. He actually used to work doing the TAPS I want to say department or end of paranormal investigations in Arizona.
Hmm.
Him and his wife, they were involved with them out there. They were like their team out in Arizona.
So like part of the Taps family kind of
Yes,
thing?
they were the
Oh,
Arizona team. There's Kale right there. Hello, Mr. Kale Kelly. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
We're doing good. Kale, this is
Geez,
Kenny
I didn't even
Biddle.
realize I didn't hit enter studio button.
That's okay.
Sorry.
This is all new to me too. But Kenny, this is Kale. Kale, this is Kenny.
What's
nice
up,
to meet you,
Kenny?
sir.
How you
How you
doing?
doing?
Good.
So yeah, that's how Kale started out. But his main uh, passion actually is the UFO um, stuff, and so we figured we'd change it up tonight and talk about that stuff. I've got some questions because I've been cramming, trying to figure this because I really know much about UFOs, so
There's
I'm
not really much to cram for. There's
doing
just
some
too much.
homework, guys. So so I don't look like a complete buckethead, but there's so much out there, and so much is it's so scary. Because, fact or fiction, guys? I mean, that's the question. Is this a fact or fiction?
Go ahead, Kenny.
Well, I think there's a lot of misidentification. There's a lot of assumptions going on. I mean, when we talk about UFOs, I mean the first word is unidentified, and that leads to a lot of issues. When people just see lights or just things in the far distance and they can't identify them, which I mean, if you see a far off object and you can't identify it, I mean, that doesn't mean it's alien, but I think there's a lot of that going on. Also think, I mean, there's also hoaxes. So because there's hoaxes across the board, whether you're talking about Bigfoot or lake monsters or ghosts or stuff like that, there's always going to be people that try to make some money off of it. And then there's stuff that we just don't know. And I leave it at that. I mean, no one has actually presented an actual alien craft or an actual alien. So I don't think we can conclude that it is either until we actually have something to study. So, and I don't really go on hearsay. I don't go on rumors. I don't really, I don't buy into that until we actually have the evidence in front of us. So that's my take on it right now. I mean, I also want to say that I'm hopeful. I mean, I'm a huge sci-fi nut. I grew up on Star Wars. I grew up watching Star Trek. So I would love for someone or some species to come down, pick me up. I want to drive. I want to drive a UFO. I think that would be just phenomenal. You know, especially if it looks like the Millennium Falcon. I'm game, but I don't see any evidence of that yet. So that's my take.
And you, Mr. Kale?
Oh, I definitely believe. When you look at civilization, you look at history, you look at all the reports. As of late, you've had a lot of military people come out and talk about different things that they've encountered. There's just a lot of really high-level people that have come forward, whistleblowers that have a lot to lose or are putting themselves on the line, disclosing what they know. I don't think there's ever, well, I'm not going to say never, but I don't think anytime soon the government's going to roll out everything they know or what they have. That doesn't make much sense, but I think that they all know. But for whatever reason, I don't know why, but they keep this all under wraps, and they have for a long, long time. I don't know if it's because of religion. I mean, you saw not too long ago, even the Pope came out and said, okay, it's okay to believe in aliens. I don't know what that was all about, but I feel like they're softening everybody up for something.
Yeah, that's the take I'm getting too. Because why all of a sudden are they just volunteering information or videos or you know, it's the slowly seeping out or whatever excuse they want to use. But I find that awful strange as well because you know you used to hear a long time ago people saying, "Oh, I saw this or that," and then all of a sudden you heard nothing after that. It just totally was absorbed, and nobody ever followed up on nothing. Um, Now, like with that big fiasco there in Florida about, you know, the aliens landing in the mall. I mean,
I
that
don't know
was
about
just
all that.
ridiculous, but, you know, they're still riding on that ride. I mean,
That I mean, I did look into that, and I was able to obtain the clearest footage that I could obtain. And again, mind you, the good footage was someone on a balcony at a high rise using their phone and zooming in at night. But it was clear that it was three people walking side by side. And the whole idea of aliens was just, it was just silly.
yeah.
To say that that was the reason all this chaos was going at the mall. There's police reports. You can see other eyewitnesses that weren't buying into the story, but telling you what was going on. And it's just, yeah, that was kind of silly and got out of control. But I mean, that's the kind of story that goes viral. You know, people love that
yeah.
entertainment, especially like that came on the heels of the Vegas story. The kid that said that the aliens landed in his backyard. And that was another story I investigated and found that he was very inconsistent with his stories and his facts did not line up. So another story that just goes viral, and it's very easy. It's very easy to put something out like that and have it go across the internet. But it's very hard to actually investigate it and get a serious look at it.
Right. To even get any kind of actual proof.
I just feel like those kinds of stories they're the ones that ruin it. You know, you just get one goofball story or group of people that make something up, and then it just gives the whole field a bad name. It's no different than I think like paranormal investigating. You know, when people start faking everything, then it only takes a few people to say, "Oh, see, they faked it, so everything's fake."
Right.
It does raise the bar, you know.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. You know, you have these people that fake things for either attention or for money, and it just makes everyone look stupid. Both sides of the fence.
Sure.
Like people that believe in it, people that don't believe in it, that still investigate it. It makes us all look silly, like we're wasting our time because look, you know, a bunch of teenagers are making up stories, and it just makes everyone look bad.
Sure.
Oh, I absolutely agree.
So yeah, well, we're going through that right now with the drama and the debunking world against, you know, the fakers and the real investigators, and it's just turning into a big shit show. That's the bottom
That's
line.
been going on for 13, 15 years. I don't know.
But I mean, it's really getting nasty out there.
Everywhere.
It's been like that. And then you had the paranormal unity people, and, you know, I've seen all the waves come and go, and it never works out. Somebody's always trying to get famous somewhere. And I think that's the problem with Patreon and YouTube and everything else, people are getting paid by the clicks, the views. So of course it behooves them to fake something. If you can get something that looks viral, it looks real, well, why wouldn't you put that on your page? You can make some money off of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
It's unfortunate, but
you get views in YouTube and TikTok. I mean, I have Tuesday set aside as TikTok Tuesday, and I spend the day literally going through videos and recreating them, showing people. Like, I don't say that I'm 100% debunking this claim, like this video of a poltergeist or this video of a Bigfoot in the woods. I'm saying it can be done by one person, by themselves, and it can look even better than what the original poster does. So I'm just trying to show you that, yes, it can be done. You should have doubt with this and maybe ask some questions. That's it. But you're right. You're absolutely right. It's a moneymaker. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
People make their lives off of it. And we see channels that put out videos of aliens and ghosts and monsters like Bigfoot and stuff every day. Every day. Like, is it really that common? No.
Yeah.
No.
I think we talked about that last week about these, ghost hunters and all these shows that every time they investigate somewhere, it's just off the hook. And I'm like,
right.
Being on so many investigations myself, that's just not, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
And you try to get that across, and you come out as the bad guy, the bad person. Well, you're just jealous or this or that. But no, we're just stating facts. When you've been doing it for over 20 years and you might have gotten a couple of EVPs, you're lucky.
Sure.
Or seen something, you're lucky. These people, like you said, it's like every day, oh, I was almost killed by a demon, or, Bigfoot chased me down through the woods. And I mean, yeah, it's
yeah, you're telling me an 8 foot tall, like 900-pound creature chased you in the woods, but you got away.
And you got away. You got away.
You got away easily, from a creature that lives in the woods and could like pick you up and toss you around like a rag doll. Like,
well, they're friendly,
Yeah.
Oh, that's it.
They're friendly. I've seen those videos too.
They just want you to go away. They don't want to eat you.
Right. Well, they want your beef jerky.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never. I mean, it's fascinating. I think the idea of something that big out there that hasn't been discovered. Sure. I mean, I don't know. They're always discovering new things. Have I seen anything like that? No. I mean, I'm from Alaska. I've never heard anything like that in the woods. I never saw anything like that. But who am I to say that somebody's lying or not? So I don't know.
Exactly. Well, I do have a friend that he was here visiting from Florida, and they were up in the Adirondacks, up around Fourth Lake area, and him and his daughter were walking on a trail, and she's pretty much not afraid of anything, but she come running back to him, white as a ghost, and he's like, "What's the matter with you?" And she says, "We have to get the F out of here right now." And she was just scared down to her boots. And he's like, "Calm down. What's the matter?" And she says, "I just saw this thing. It must have been 10 foot tall. It was all black over by this tree." And he goes, "Oh, it must have been a bear up on its hind legs." She goes, "No, I know what a bear looks like. This was not a bear." And as they were going away, they heard this horrible noise in the woods. They have no idea what it was, but he wanted to investigate, but she wanted to get the hell out of there. What it was, I don't know. I mean, it could have been just a bear. And, she caught it at a bad angle or whatever, but she said it scared the hell out of her.
There's a lot of compelling videos. Well, people have done documentaries, and people have come forward to say that there's definitely a correlation between UFOs and Bigfoot. They claim to see one with the other. I don't know. I know you're stretching it to me, but that's the way I feel. But I mean, I think there's a possibility. Hey, I have a Bigfoot right up here on the shelf somewhere. I mean, I think it's fascinating. I want to believe, of course, just like UFOs. I've seen things that I can't explain, but also being an engineer and being in the aerospace community, I know that there's companies like Raytheon and others that have developed and designed things that pretty much mimic what a UFO does. So did they get that technology from recovered UFOs? Possibly. I mean, a lot of people have put a lot on the line to come forward and say that that's the case. We made a huge technological jump in a short period of time. Where those inventions came from, I don't know. A lot of people claim that they were reverse engineered by in the community by people in the government that turned them over to different companies. So it's absolutely possible. But I also think that there's a big, huge thing in the way, and that's called the oil and gas company. And if you come up with any kind of different kind of technology that would take away from oil, gasoline, natural gas, anything like that, any kind of free energy device, I think it would just overturn the whole economy. And I don't, that's why that's the biggest thing I think that they won't let come out. They might say, sure, aliens exist, but they're never going to tell you, oh, by the way, we've already reverse engineered all the technology.
Right.
I know that Raytheon, especially down at the South Pole, they're doing a lot of kind of things they shouldn't be doing, but they've been doing them for a lot of years. They have quantum entangled communications they've worked on, all kinds of energy weapons that they've designed and developed. There's a lot of things they've done, and it's all right there on, that you can find in whether it be patents that they filed, different things. And a lot of people don't know about all these things. They have a craft that they supposedly developed that has been videotaped, lots of pictures of it, the TR-3B. It's a triangle type shape. It totally silent, free energy kind of device that works off mercury, spun at a high rate of speed, that's magnetized, and then a whole bunch of electricity is put towards it, and it evidently causes anti-gravity properties. So yeah, if you go online and look at TR-3B, and then there's footage of people have filmed in Belgium, it looks just like it, flying through the sky. A lot of military people come out and say, well, sure, this exists, but I don't think that's too far-fetched, considering that the government's probably, well, I don't know about now, but I know for sure they're at least 30 to 40 years far ahead than what people think. When you look at the Gulf War, the first Gulf War, I think that's when the stealth fighter and all these different aircraft made their debut, and people had never seen those planes, and they look like something from outer space, but they don't realize that those planes were developed early 70s, and they just now were seeing them. So to think that the government obviously has technology or aircraft or things of that nature that are far ahead of what people can think, that's totally believable.
So I'm reading military.com, and they're talking about the aircraft you mentioned. It's not a free energy device. They are putting some kind of fuel in it. It's highly pressurized mercury accelerated by nuclear energy. So yeah, it's not free energy. I think that's an incorrect term to use here.
Well, they just came out and admitted it at least existed, but I think it would, just because they wrote that doesn't mean that they're going to come out and say, oh, sure, we're using free energy.
Well, yeah, sure. But if you are going to use that term, then you're assuming that it is. And I mean, you can't just put words in there because we want to.
No, I get it. I understand what you're saying. Yeah. If you want to get that critical about it, what I'm trying to say is it's using technology that the average day person out there is not using.
Of course. I mean,
they've been able to create anti-gravity. But that's not something they come out rightfully and just say, oh, sure, we've created this.
Right. Well, because, I was doing some research and I come up with, where they were talking about how that the spaceships are propelled by anti-gravity due to the discovery of, what was the element 115, Moscovium? Have you guys heard of that?
Element 115 is something that Bob Lazar from Area 51 talked about years and years ago, and people said it didn't exist. And lately, and not too long ago, they were able to come out and say, well, sure, this exists, or they found it. I don't know a whole lot about element 115. It's on the periodic table, obviously. He claims that it's used to power this ship that he worked on. Right. I don't know. I've never seen the ship. I've never seen the schematics of it.
Yeah, because that's what the claim was, that that element causes anti-gravity so that they can travel pretty much like warp speed.
But from what I understand, they've only been able, now whether or not they have a whole bunch of it, supposedly Bob Lazar said that they have piles of this stuff. they were able to only create such a small, minuscule amount that they said they won't be able to do anything with it, but they were able to prove that it existed.
Right.
I don't know about all the other stuff. I just remember reading Popular Mechanics, was it 10 years ago, something like that, and they were talking about the TR3B, and they were like, "Oh yeah, this is fiction. It's made up. It doesn't exist." And now suddenly they're saying, "Well, it might exist." But I think this is a reason that a lot of people, they see a lot of these triangles, and I think this could be misidentification. They take it as an alien craft when it most certainly could be ours.
When it comes to element 115, I mean, it was already predicted before Bob Lazar told his stories. And I full disclosure, I don't believe any of the stories that Bob Lazar is telling.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask, what you guys thought about his credibility.
I don't think he's credible whatsoever. But it was predicted before he mentioned it that 115 was going to be something that was going to be found, because they were trying. And right now, currently, it only lasts for about 220 milliseconds.
Yeah.
So it's not something that's going to be stable, and you're not going to have warehouses full of this stuff.
Yeah, that's what I said. I think it only lasts a minuscule amount of time. They don't have piles of it. He claims that they have 1,000 pounds, or I don't know, but
I mean, people can certainly make predictions about new elements that might be found, and that doesn't mean it's based on alien technology. The problem here is that Bob Lazar gave this fantastic story with nothing to back it up and put it out there. And then one of his predictions, yes, came true. But again, it had been predicted before he told his story. There are documents that state that they were working on it. So he didn't get the story. It wasn't original from him. He got it from somewhere else.
Oh, okay.
And just repeated it. So these are the little details that you're not going to find in the common reprints in books about aliens and UFOs and stuff like that feature Bob Lazar. You really have to dig and find these documents. He just doesn't. His story elements just do not line up, and I don't find him credible whatsoever. And I kind of find it silly, because if you watch back, this is something that he did not predict. But when he started giving his interviews, the internet was not a thing. And now all these old interviews are available online, and you can go back and find how he changes his story throughout time. He adds elements, he changes elements, and it's not the same story.
Yeah, because that's all that pops up when you type in that certain thing. Yeah, it all pops up about him, the secret base.
Right.
Section, what was it?
His clearance, the badge that he had,
Yeah.
which doesn't match the actual badges that were used. There's a lot of issues with that. And I mean, that's something that's coming up a lot not recent times, from the last, 10, 15, 20 years, is all of these old stories across the board. I know we're talking about UFOs today, but like across the board with people that investigated like haunted houses in the 70s and stuff like that, you're finding interviews and being able to go back and research and find out that the story started one way and then it changed and evolved and had elements added to it over time with each retelling. So, I mean, one of my research techniques, I mean, and it should be for anyone, is I always go to primary sources. I try not to use secondary sources at all. I try to go to primary sources. So I try to find the original interviews and the original articles, because that's where the story originated. And you want to start there, because and I'm going off topic here. I apologize. But like the story of the Brown Lady of Raymond Hall, like probably one of the most famous ghost photos in history. That story is completely different when it started in the 1800s, or even before that. It was completely different than what it is today. And I only found that out because I went back and looked at all the articles and found newspaper articles telling the story. And then somewhere around the 1900s, right at the turn of the century, the story changed because one person wrote a story, like a fictional story, and that's when it's changed. And now it's some other lady that's supposed to be the ghost. But that's just an example.
Right. Yeah,
Bob Lazar is a very difficult. It's a difficult case. George Knapp originally broke this story. Bob Lazar came out as a guy that that said his name was Dennis. He was incognito. He claimed that he worked at what was it, S4, which is a little bit south of Area 51,
Right.
proper, Groom Lake. He claimed that they had several different craft there. He only worked on one that he called the sport model. Um, it how do you get proof of this? This
Right.
is one of those things. It's like, well, did he not? George Knapp did a lot of digging because he thought he was also a fraud, and he claimed that he worked at Los Alamos and all these places. They claimed that they never heard of him, but George Knapp did do his due diligence, and he even said, he goes, look, and they said he didn't exist, but here I'm looking at the phone book for the place, and here's clearly his name here. Does the government have the ability to wipe out somebody's whole past, their education, their identity? Oh, I have no doubt. Probably. I've never personally seen it happen to anybody. I don't want to be the brunt of it.
Exactly.
But government's pretty powerful, But when mainstream colonels, generals, people that really are reputable people start coming out and talking about craft hovering above their nuclear silos and disengaging all their nukes. And it's not just them, the Russians were discussing this in the 80s. You go back in antiquity, there's drawings on walls of what appear to be, what we would call the Gray. People have known them as the Watchers. I think there was a good show that came out a little while ago. Somebody was pretty creative. I think it was a little bit of a stretch, but I think the documentary was called UFOs in the Bible. That's a pretty good one to watch. And they talk about Ezekiel's wheel and all these people that claim to, hey, he was taken up in the sky by chariots of fire. And these people are like, well, they're talking about abductions. I get it. You could go that route. Could there absolutely be a different race of being that have been here an awfully long time? Sure. When you look at what is that? I'm trying to remember the formula for the known planets in the universe. Is spacing my. I don't know. Do you recall that Drake's equation? Sorry, Drake's equation calculates the possibility of known civilizations in the universe, and it's just it's staggering. I can't give you the number off the top of my head, but it goes way out. So, are we the only ones out there? I highly doubt it. But I've never I've seen things in the sky. I have video. I put it on YouTube. I have some pretty cool pictures that look like triangles. You zoom in on the pictures I have, they look like discs. Unfortunately, and I will critique my own photos, they're like the Bigfoot, they're blob squatches.
Yeah.
They're blurry. But you can zoom in and it looks like a disc. But until one hovers right over me, yeah, I'd love to see that. And I'm totally open-minded to it. But this is just one of those things that until one lands somewhere or they actually roll it out and say, okay, look at this. What can you do? You have to take it with a grain of salt,
Right.
And I just wanted to give you the number. It's 12,500 alien civilizations, intelligent civilizations that are believed to be existing out in the universe, according to the Drake equation.
Sure, so and let's say they were even.
It's not a lot.
Look how far we've come in 100 years. Take a civilization. Let's say they were 1,000 years more advanced, 1,000,000 years. You just don't know. Would these people have? If they have the ability to? People talk about, well, they would never be able to travel 40 light years. Sure, they would. They could create wormholes. They could do it. They would have the scientific wherewithal to do probably a lot more than we can do. Now, can I prove that? I don't know. But
yeah, I would argue that, again, that's assuming. We don't know for sure. They could be, 1,000 years ahead of us, but it still doesn't mean they can create wormholes that would be stable. We're talking like Stargate wormholes, but that we wouldn't know for sure.
And
even so, that's vast distances. It's not just 40 light years. We're talking thousands of light years. That's unimaginably big. It's huge. I can't grasp that concept of how far that is.
Right.
And if we're talking that we're seeing like 7 billion years into the past, I forget what the James Webb is looking right now, and just imagine that's one direction.
Oh yeah.
Now you're going the other direction. You have this hypothetical sphere of 7 billion light years across. Either way, so 14 billion. All right, and now you're talking about there's only about, according to this equation, there's only about 12,000 possible civilizations that are intelligent. That's really spread out, really spread out. And again, this is all just hypothetical. I'm not taking this as carved in cement or carved in stone, because it's not. But I'm just like, that boggles my mind. It's fascinating to me. It really is, because to think that there might be other civilizations out there, and I want to hope that there is, but am I ever going to meet one? I don't think so, because it's just too far. It's way too far.
Come on, think positive, man.
Yeah.
Dude, I try, man. I try.
It goes back to be careful what you wish for. You might wake up and go, why is my ass so sore? I don't understand. And then next thing you know, you'll be that guy saying, I'm getting abducted every night. And somebody goes, I don't believe you.
I've been probed.
If I get abducted, I promise you I will not be claiming it on the internet or my Facebook page. I will be showing up on the White House lawn in the UFO. Going, I got it. I hijacked it. I carjacked the bitch.
Well, you might not even remember or know that you've been abducted. I mean, isn't that it? Some people say, it's been going on for years and years. And I don't know. I've never.
And they start having flashbacks and.
Yeah. I think the problem with that is trying to tease out the I don't want to say legitimate memories, because memory is very fallible.
Oh, sure.
It's horrible. But to tease out what people really claim happened to them, and leave out all the stuff that has been added on by other people, by Hollywood, by television, the media, all of this. Because, these stories get sensationalized and like out their ass, it gets sensationalized for TV movies and this and that. And even the headlines make it out to be bigger than it is. So when I hear these eyewitness reports, I would rather talk to the person face to face, because I don't know if the information I'm getting is correct or accurate, or, just embellished by that person that's telling me, what did they add to the story? Because when they're adding emotional components, like when you describe something, like say like you saw a light in the sky, and you might say, I saw this big light in the sky and it zoomed across there, and before I knew it was gone. So those words that I use, big light and it zoomed across the sky, like that might mean something different to you than it does to me. Like zooming may be just going across like pretty fast like this. Because, you usually watch aircraft and they're going across the sky.
By.
Yeah. But if I see it like zoom, like, zoom, like, damn, that was fast. Or a big light, like what's big? Like how big is big? So that's why I always like, again, primary sources. I'd like to go to the primary source and talk to them and really ask a lot of clarifying questions to really get to the detail. Because I think that's important. If it's coming second or third or fourth, or how many stories do we get that is like 20 times removed from the original source? I can't take those seriously.
Right. Yes. And it's always, I don't know. The majority you hear is nighttime sightings.
Right.
The time that I saw something was broad daylight, and this was the early 80s. Walking home. My husband and I were dating. We were walking home from his house. And we just happened to look up clear blue sky. And then there was this dark gray disc shaped thing just sitting there. So, I was making a joke. Well, they're here to abduct us. But the thing wasn't moving. It was, you could figure if it was a balloon, if it was something out there, would be some movement. There was zero movement. And we're just standing there for like 15 minutes staring at this thing, thinking, what the hell is this? We turn around to go back the other way. That's why I wish it was the day of the cell phones back then, because that would have been an awesome video. Turn back around and it was gone. It was nowhere. Now I could say, okay, if it was something, it was hiding behind clouds, but there was no clouds. There was nothing. Total blue sky, and it was just gone. So whether it was alien or what, I really can't say, but what the heck else would it have been?
Yeah,
So did
my
it? I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Did it fly off, or did
We
you?
don't know. It just disappeared.
So it was like there, and all of a sudden,
There,
blink,
and it was gone.
Okay. And where were you?
We were just walking back over to my home,
Okay.
and like I said, we were staring at it for 15 minutes solid, and I was joking the whole time. And then when we turned around to start walking again, we just happened to glance back, and it was gone.
Okay. All right. So you weren't. And I'm not trying to point out and go, haha, I caught you or anything like that. I'm just
Right.
saying. So you weren't looking at it for a solid 15 minutes. You were probably glancing up at it.
No,
every
we were
now and then.
standing there. We stood right there in the middle of the street and stared at it.
Okay. Because you just said you turned around the walk,
But
and
then
you
we
glanced
turned
back.
around to walk away because how long are
Okay.
you going to stand in the middle of the road?
I get it. I get
Right.
it. I apologize.
Right.
But
No, that's
any
fine. Yes.
investigation, details matter.
Yes.
Like
and it's-
that's paramount. Details matter. So that's why I
within
asked so
that
many questions.
right. Within that split minute of turning our backs on it and then glancing back again at it, it was gone. So what is it? I don't know. What was it? Who
Yeah, I don't
knows?
know.
But
Well,
like I
that's
said, I
that's
wish
that.
we had cell phones because it was clear as day.
My mom told the story. She told me the story a long time ago. We were. I guess I'm kind of into this field of just the mysterious, whether it's Bigfoot, UFOs, ghosts, whatever. Because I grew up in a house where my mom watched Star Trek every night. We watched In Search of with Leonard Nimoy. We watched all the Battlestar
Yes.
Galactica in the 80s. So I've always been fascinated with this stuff. And my mom told me the story that took place in the late 60s. Up in Alaska, my father had an airboat, and they were illegally fishing on this river called the Deshka River. Really late at night. It was my aunt and my uncle, and that's my father's sister and her husband, and it was my father and my mother, and they saw a light coming down the river, and they assumed that it was law enforcement or game and fish, whoever it was. My dad ran the airboat into a big thicket and shut the engine off. So they didn't want to get in trouble. My mom said that this probably 60 to 100 feet off the ground, this huge disc was silently going above the river, shining a beam of light down on the water, went down past them about 200 yards. The light turned off, and she said, as fast as you could think, it just went straight up and it disappeared. I took that with a grain of salt. I was up in Alaska that summer to work, and I was driving with my uncle from Alyeska back to Anchorage, and I remembered that, and I said, "Oh, my mom tells me you guys saw a UFO years ago," and he told me the exact same story. So I was like, "Well, that's pretty." And my uncle has never been known to lie to me. So what was that he saw? What did they see? I don't know. When you think about the technology of the time, I don't know. It's and there's a lot of people have stories like that. There's an interesting guy. I don't know if you guys have looked into Phil Snyder. Have you heard that name?
No.
Phil Snyder was a geologist for the U.S. government. He claims that he was in charge or part of the team that did the geology studies so they could design or build these underground bases. They called them DUMBs, deep underground military bases. So him and his team, they would go in, they would study the rock and determine whether or not it was a suitable place to build these underground facilities. Well, he talks about how they would drill these holes, and they'd drill cross holes. They would blow it all up, and then they hollow out the inside, whatever, just a normal job. He said, but this one particular time, they had the drill going down. All of a sudden, the drill bit stopped, and he talks about how all this horrible stinking air came up. So he went down. What he thought was interesting is that there was a lot of green and black berets there. You'd have to watch his testimony. He claims that they went down in a basket to see what was going on, and right there in front of him was some 8-foot tall alien. He had a Walter PPK. He talks about how he pulled it out. He shot one, and that this thing just went like this, that it passed its hand in front of his chest and launched some kind of energy beam at him that laid him open like a fish. The this Green Beret. This is his story now. The Green Beret shoved him back in the basket, hit the up button. There was some huge fight or something or other that took place. To this day, Phil Schneider has half his fingers are gone. He pulls up his shirt. He'll show you that his whole chest was laid open. Anyway, this guy kept testifying, and his main thing that he was upset about is that the government was not telling people the truth about UFOs and aliens, and that people had the right to know. And he's very passionate about it. If you watch his testimony, but he straight up said, look, I'm not out to kill myself or anything like that. Well, wasn't too much longer that, and they're kind of gruesome, but you can go online and look at Phil Schneider's death photos. They're older photos, but they found him, and this guy had a lot of medical problems as a result. He had a catheter and different things. They found him strangled to death in his house with this catheter wrapped around his neck several times. Somebody killed him. And I don't know if that was to shut him up but see, it's one of those, it's very fascinating. The guy tells a very credible story. A lot of these people that have come forward, they're not making any money off of this. They're not getting rich by no means. If anything, it's damaging their credibility. A lot of these recent whistleblowers, military whistleblowers that have come forward, these pilots and whatnot, they have a lot to risk and a lot to lose. They're not,
what do they have to lose?
Well, you're in the military. You're going to walk around. You might be damaged from getting promoted down the road. Who knows?
So
you might become a laughing stock. Maybe somebody doesn't want to hire you now.
Aren't some of these guys retired military? Not
some of them are. Yeah. One guy. Yeah. But they all, obviously you get out of the military, you want to get a private civilian job in
right.
private sector. So you don't want to have people looking at you like you're some flake.
Well, yeah, but there's an issue with the being in the military. If you're disclosing military secrets, you can get into a boatload of trouble.
No, they just if you go on and look, they that's why they're all coming out of the woodwork now, because they passed some kind of law. They have there's a time period where they said, okay, people are allowed to come out and be whistleblowers, whatever you want to call it, but they gave them some kind of window to come forward with what they had with the promise of no repercussions for doing so.
I did hear something about that. Yeah.
And that's why a lot of them have come forward recently. But this is only for a certain period of time. And they said after that period of time, if you come forward with anything after that time, you will be held responsible and blah, blah, blah. But
so I don't
know the exact law. Well, you'd have to look it up. I know that I didn't really look into that where they opened it up for people to come forward. I know they did. I don't know. I'm always.
Yeah, I know. I do remember hearing something about that, because there used to be, you had to be, sign papers and everything swearing that you will never reveal anything that you're not supposed to.
Testify in front of Congress.
And then after so many years of service, they said that there's nothing they could do if they opened their mouths about it.
Yeah. And the one guy, he talks about how he got death threats. He got a lot of ridicule. On top of that, he also claimed that when asked, he's testifying in front of Congress, and the one woman asked him, is the government in possession of bodies, blah, blah, blah. And he straight up says, I would have to answer that in I can't remember it's not a peacock. I can't remember.
He tried to say it behind closed doors.
Well, what it is, it's a secured thing where it blocks all.
But he was not able to offer any firsthand accounts. Every account that he was declaring was secondhand. But it wasn't him.
I think I get it, but but he said he's like, you can pull these people in, and he gave names. He said you can pull them in a skiff. That's what they call it. He said you can pull them in and they'll testify. But this guy had a lot to lose by coming forward to give this testimony. He swore under oath, under perjury, under danger of committing perjury. A lot of these people have come forward to testify about the things that they saw or been involved in.
Right. You're talking about this is that Phil guy?
No, this is not Phil Schneider. Phil Schneider's it's an older video. That's like back in the 80s. He's just one person, but he tells a very fascinating story. I'm sure if you go on YouTube and you type in Phil Schneider speaking or something, it's worth listening to. He's fascinating. It's an interesting story. He's got some pretty bad scars and things. You know, he shows documentation of his badge, his military credentials, all those things. But he worked as a subcontractor for the government, so it's kind of like what I do. I work I do work for Raytheon and a few other military contractors, but it's just all aerospace work. But I know that I have to sign NDAs and different things. But I'll be the first one to testify right here under oath that I don't work on any UFO stuff.
Okay.
So,
I wish.
the Military Whistleblower Protection Act doesn't cover when you want to whistleblow about secret government agencies, unless there's no time thing, like the time that you mentioned here, where it was like they gave them a certain amount of time, they come out and do it or whistleblow. That's not what this is about. According to this, according to the Military Protection Act, the Whistleblower Protection Act.
When did that come out? Can you since you got it? Because from what I understand, I'm definitely not meaning to interrupt you. I think that because of the amount of people that were coming out and the testimonies that were coming out, they either extended it or they changed some part of it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say I know. I don't.
Yeah.
So I'd probably have to dive into it after this show, maybe.
According to this, if you're protected if the service member reasonably believes evidences violate a law or regulation, including a law regulating prohibiting rape, sexual assault, sexual misconduct, and code of military justice. Also, gross mismanagement, a gross waste of funds, an abuse of authority, or a threat by another member of the armed forces or employee of the federal government. So these are the three conditions where they are protected. So it's not about, I heard somebody talk about an alien craft.
Right, military secret.
Yeah, so these retired military or military people that are making these so-called whistleblowing accusations, they are not violating anything. So they're not going to get prosecuted because there is nothing for them to be prosecuted about, because they're not actually breaking or disclosing any kind of secret or top secret projects. So this to me, this looks like just, hey, if I can say a bunch of this and this and that, if I can make up a story and sell it, I can get paid to go around and do all these conferences and talks and stuff, but I'm not going to get in trouble. I'm not going to get prosecuted by the military or the government because what I'm saying is not true.
I know.
So
see, I understand what you're saying, but
I mean, they would have to really bring some actual evidence, not stand up in front of a hearing, a congressional hearing, and say, I heard a guy say this. I heard another guy say that. I mean, to be honest, and I'm not coming at you.
No, I know that. My issue is,
but
how can you take people that have a long time military career? I just think it's kind of dangerous to come out and just throw a blanket. Everybody's lying.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying everyone's lying,
or people are embellishing things to become famous. I think that's kind of dangerous. A lot of people have nothing to gain by this. Some people, sure. Some people go on the circuit and they'll tell their story and make some money. Some people have come forward and it has done nothing but destroy their lives. And they've even come out and said, I wish I'd never said anything. I've never made a dime off this. And you're talking generals, colonels, people with pretty prestigious military careers that have come forward to talk about these things. And I think just to say, well, everybody's making something up, I think that's kind of dangerous.
Well, according to the whistleblower thing, that's what I'm going with here. And
maybe it's a different, like I said, I am being completely honest. I have not looked into the whistleblower thing. Maybe there's a separate one for this. I don't know. I really don't know. Like I said, I have not looked into that. You bring it up in this, it's interesting. I probably will look into it now because I didn't.
Now you know you will.
Act. Yeah, I didn't look into the Whistleblower Act for UFOs.
And
I can see how it could pertain to rapes and things of that nature, or something that they see as illegal. Maybe this is some different thing they're doing. I don't know, but suddenly it seems like it's suddenly become a thing where people are doing it in front of Congress now. So I don't know why all of a sudden. Why weren't they doing that before?
I'm sorry. I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing at Congress isn't the most trustworthy people
No,
right
I
now.
no.
So
They're all crooks and liars.
you
Yes,
know,
I
it's
absolutely
it's
agree.
not anything. But I
That's
mean,
why I'm a
even
registered independent, because they're all crooks
even
and
with
liars.
even with people with military careers, I mean, they're still people. They're still
Sure.
people, just like anyone that has like a very successful career outside of the military. They are still
A
people.
lot of them do, yeah. A
They
lot
are
of pilots.
susceptible to like influence. They are susceptible to wanting to do something after you know, like after their military career. Maybe they have contracting, or maybe they want to do something later. I don't know all the circumstances, but just to say that people have a long military career does not by itself make them trustworthy. It's the people and their actions that make them trustworthy.
There was a company called Lockheed Skunk Works. You've heard of that, right?
Lockheed?
Yeah.
I heard
Lockheed
yeah.
Martin at the time was Lockheed Skunk Works. They're the ones that did a lot of the top secret planes, different things for the military for years and years. They did the SR-71. This is Lockheed Martin, or Lockheed Skunk Works. Anyway, Lockheed was run by a guy named Ben Rich. Ben Rich, in one of his last open talks that he gave to a bunch of engineering students, I can't remember exactly where it is. I mean, I'm sure you could look it up. He was quoted as saying near the end of his, he was retiring, so he was going off into the ether somewhere. But at the end of his presentation, he had a little UFO up on the screen, and it went like a cartoon kind of thing that they made up. And he said, if you can imagine it, he said, Lockheed, he said, we now have the technology to take ET home. If you can imagine it, we've done it. And that he ended his presentation like that. And everybody was like, what? Why would he just drop a bomb like that? Well, so then somebody came up and asked him, well, how are these things propelled? And he said, well, how does ESP work? And the guy says, well, all points in space and time are connected. And he just said, that's how it works. So I'm talking, you're getting into quantum mechanics. This goes hand in hand with quantum entangled communications that they've been experimenting with. I don't even know if that's on the internet yet, but that is.
How do you know about it then?
Well, I told you I work in this kind of thing. It might be on the internet now. I don't know. Maybe look it up. Quantum. Just type in quantum mechanics or quantum entangled communications. It might be out there. Supposedly the way this works is it's like if you take an electron, you know how spooky action at a distance.
Action from a distance.
It works similar to that. If you take an electron, you can put them a million miles away from each other. You spin one direction, the other one responds. They've now got a technology that they've been experimenting with in Antarctica. Raytheon has a huge facility down there. They've also been experimenting with a lot of direct energy weapons, which they're not supposed to be doing, but they have a huge antenna array down there that they claim is for communications. But supposedly they've got this technology now that they can communicate at almost unlimited distances instantaneously.
So where are you getting this information from? You mentioned that it might be on the internet, or you didn't know.
I haven't even looked to see if it's on the internet. Hold on, let me see.
So where did you get this information then?
This was a whistleblower that came out that was he's a former Navy SEAL that worked down in Antarctica. I only say that I know that they do a lot of certain things that the people don't know about, only because I work in a field like that we work on just stuff that people aren't aware. It's like Russia saying, well, we have a missile that can travel at X speed. Well, I guarantee you we've already done that.
All right. So right now, though, it's you're speculating.
Well, if that's what you want to call it. Let me look this up.
I mean, yeah, if you don't have a source, then you're speculating.
It doesn't make it untrue. Let's see.
That's why it's called speculation.
I understand what you're saying. Here you go. What is quantum entanglement communications? What is quantum entanglement between people? What is quantum entanglement theory? Is quantum communications real? So how can quantum entanglement be used for secure communications? There's all kinds of stuff here on the internet about it. But like I said, here's the whole thing. Quantum entanglement communications, March 22nd, 2021. So there's already articles on it. But I think the point I'm trying to get at is this doesn't make it extraterrestrial. It just means that our government, the whole point I'm trying to get at is our government is either experimenting with or has developed technologies that are so far advanced that I don't think the average person could probably wrap their head around them. It doesn't mean that I even am in any way, shape, or form involved in those things. But I think when you look at the things like the stealth fighter, things that people weren't aware of for 30 years, I think that they're just on average a long way ahead of what the average person is aware of. I think most militaries are probably far ahead of what the average person is aware of.
I mean, I wouldn't disagree with that. I mean, and that's the nature of having your military and secret programs and top secret programs.
So who's to say that what people are seeing all over aren't our stuff?
Exactly.
I don't know.
It really comes down to what are they seeing? Are they seeing anything? And there's a lot of speculation going on, and there's a lot of assumptions going on. And a lot of these speculations and assumptions are being presented as facts and put out there so people can read them and take them as, oh, well, this is actually what's happening, when we really don't know. And yeah, I agree with you that there's probably 10, 15, 20 years, maybe more advanced in secret development that we're not going to know until,
guarantee
10, 15, 20 years from now,
Right.
which is,
they want us to know.
I get it. It's always been like that. I'm not questioning that. But what I question is if we present ideas as facts and we don't know for sure, because if we don't know, then we don't know.
Yeah.
And I'm going to wait until we do know, and we actually have facts in front of us. But yeah, when it comes to what people are seeing in the skies, I don't know. And we have much more. We have much more than 50 years ago. We have drones. We have a lot more balloons. We have a lot of drones. I mean, I can't shake a stick without hitting somebody that owns a drone now. I own 3. Yeah. So
I got a DJI. Yeah.
Because they're always around. So who knows what we're seeing? And if we're seeing them across valleys, clear skies, how far is line of sight, depending on your elevation. And if you're seeing a drone or you're seeing lights. I mean, I've had people come to me and give me videos of 3 or 4 or 5 lights all circling around doing a dance together. And you find out that it's those circus lights that are on the ground shining up at the clouds, when they have a carnival or something. And
I know, club opening or whatever.
Yeah, stuff like that. Swearing to me that the aliens are going to land in their backyard. And again, I want to preface this by, I really would hope that it's true. I would love it to be true. But these are the same people swearing to me up and down, this is real. This is real. So that's where I think we talked about this earlier. That's where the trouble comes in. Who do you believe? Well, you have to investigate each case separately. You can't just go in and just take people with face value, because you don't know what they're seeing.
Yeah. So is there, I understand being a skeptic, but does that mean you're skeptical about everything? I mean, it's just like you feel the need to believe everything. Like you need to have proof of everything.
I would like to have proof of things. Yeah. Mostly extraordinary.
But is there anything you believe on faith?
I don't carry beliefs at all. I grew up in a Catholic household, and I know how hardcore beliefs can be.
Sure.
And how hard they are to change when they're challenged. So I make it a practice not to hold any beliefs whatsoever. I hold ideas. Ideas are much easier to change. So if you give me good, valid, objective information that changes my way of thinking, then certainly I will check it first, because I don't take anyone's word for it. But I'll check it. And if it comes out to be true, I change my worldview. Simple as that. It's much easier to change an idea.
No, I
But
get it. It's just
at
it's
least
an interesting way of thinking. I don't mean anything derogatory about that. I'm always curious, like the mindset there. I mean, that's the only reason I'm
Oh
asking.
no, it's okay. I mean, I don't mind being asked questions at all, or being questioned about what I think or my beliefs or lack of beliefs, because we are all skeptical of things.
Sure.
It's not just people that are skeptics or labeled skeptics.
Mhm.
I don't actually go around calling myself a skeptic unless I'm joking around. You know, if I show up at a paranormal conference, I'm like, yeah, I'm a token skeptic. Or even this shirt was not made by me. It was made by a friend because they, made a play.
Oh, I just realized it says skeptic.
Yeah. But I mean, my approach to things, especially when it's extraordinary claims, is okay. I'm not sure about that. It doesn't fit in with our mainstream science, what we know. So if it is an extraordinary claim that is true, let me see what you got. Let me see the evidence and the data. And that's cool. If you have good data, you have solid evidence, awesome. That's great. But the problem is, in many cases, that's not the case. And when I say in many cases, this is what I do full time. I investigate claims of alleged paranormal activity, UFOs, monsters, stuff like that. That's what I do full time.
How do I get into doing that and be able to pay my bills?
There's a handful, like not even a handful of actual jobs like this. Because I work for the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry. We publish Skeptical Inquirer magazine.
But you're able to make money.
I'm on salary. So yeah, this is this is my job.
Oh man, I want to do that.
And it's fun. I mean,
that'd be more exciting than what I do.
Well, I used to be in aerospace. I built helicopters from the ground up. I worked for Leonardo.
Where do you live?
Right now I'm in Buffalo.
Oh, you're in Buffalo. Oh, you're over there by Laura.
Yeah, I used to live in Philadelphia. So I worked at the Leonardo plant down there, and built helicopters, Qualo 119s. And then I was an auto mechanic before that. And I also worked on X-ray machines. I was an engineer for Siemens. So got a lot of background in fixing shit, diagnosing things, figuring out what's wrong, trying to fix the problem. Go. You know, when you're under a table with a patient that's open during surgery and the table doesn't work and they're trying to yell at you to get the machine back up and running, with blood coming down, dripping down on either side of you, there's a little bit of pressure there. And
I think so.
A little bit. So
I'd probably want to get out of that field too at that point.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did. This is much better, much safer. So
yeah, I live here in Phoenix, so I'm surrounded by, they make the Apache, they make all these different helicopters here. Obviously, Phoenix, home of the Phoenix Lights. I live not too far from that mountain that's in the background there that the lights were above. If the mountain is here, I live over here on the side of it, so I'd be looking at the side of it. That's an interesting case. I wish I would have been looking up at the sky that night to see what everybody else saw.
Right.
There was a lot of different claims. I mean, that's one of those cases where at first the Air Force came out and said, no, we didn't have any planes in the sky that night. Then the next thing you know, oh yeah, well, but those were flares. And then it was like, well, no, they weren't flares. It was this. And it turned into be like Roswell, where they just kept changing the story over and over. So it's like, well, it's one of those things you'll never know what really happened. But people have some pretty interesting claims of what they saw, giant triangle, a delta shaped craft flying over. One guy said it was, he could look both ways and it blocked out all the stars. Pretty interesting case. UFOs sightings are Phoenix in Arizona by itself is pretty much a hotbed for UFO sightings. A lot of people see a lot of stuff.
Right. You guys there's a lot of reports.
Yeah. And I have a video I shot walking my dog. I put it on YouTube. You don't ever hear me say, hey, that's a UFO in the video. I just like, hey, I've been looking at this bright light and another light comes up underneath it. And I mean, this was an extremely bright light that had been hovering there for, gosh, I don't know, 5-10 minutes. And I finally decided I'm going to pull out my phone and start filming this. Well, at the time I did that, this other light comes up underneath it, and when it gets near this one, it gets really bright and then just goes shoo, and just disappears. And I was
Oh,
like, you
yes, you
hear me on
showed
the
me
video?
that. Yeah, you
Yeah,
showed me
you hear me
that.
on the video go, did you see that? That light just disappeared. I was like, I'm so happy I caught that, because I've always been I wanted to catch
Catch
something.
something, right?
So it's pretty cool. Was that a UFO? I don't know. I mean, it was very interesting what I caught. I had other people at that time were on the news. Hey, did you see what happened in the sky last night? So it's one of those weird cases. But
So, like, I have a question: is why would you think, or do you guys have a theory, or does anybody have a theory why, like, all of the desert areas have more sightings than anywhere else?
I don't necessarily. Well, first of all, you'd have to believe in aliens. But I,
I mean, is there
I
a reason you think why they would be attracted to, like, the Arizona and
when you
Nevada? I
look
mean,
at when you look at sightings per capita and a lot of these weird events, whether they be alien or they be paranormal activity, there's a really cool thing online that you can look at, and they're called aeromagnetic gravity maps. And I don't know if you've ever taken a look at those. And
No.
they show magnetized areas. Like if you're looking at the United States, it'll show up in different colors, and it'll show highly magnetic areas as opposed to places that are not. And if you are to lay a grid over for like UFO sightings, things like that, they seem to fall in these really highly magnetic areas or places that have a lot of high strangeness, like Sedona, Arizona. Um, I started looking into this when I was doing paranormal investigating, because I thought, well, maybe there's a correlation between these highly magnetic areas and what people are reporting as ghosts and whatnot. And it seems like
Right.
these areas that in particular, I tried to line a lot of things up with these areas. So they're pretty cool maps to look at. Obviously, you can pull them up from anywhere in the world, every country. Satellites take these images, and they're pretty neat. It's just something more to dive into.
Interesting.
Yeah, I figured that out when I started doing the research on doing this show tonight. It was like, oh my God, there's just
Oh,
so
it
much.
gets so
It's
deep. I
very
mean,
overwhelming.
why are they coming here? Why would they want to deal with us? Did they create us? You
Right.
know, I mean, you could go on and on and on and on.
Like I said, well, and like another question is, do you think that all of this was right before our faces for generations, and it's just nobody has ever picked up on it? Because they say, like, if you look at, like, in Egypt and all of the hieroglyphics and all that, there's some there that would make sense with, extraterrestrials helping and teaching, or so that's what we would believe
I think
now.
there's an argument to be made for that. There's no, maybe there was a body recovered somewhere in a sarcophagus. I mean, I don't know. I think for us to make some of the technological leaps that we've made throughout the decades in a short period of time, there's something to be said about that. I mean, I don't know who really knows.
Like what you and I had talked about before, the great mystery of the pyramids.
Yeah, there's places all over the planet, Baalbek, major, hundreds of 1,000-ton stones that they don't understand how they were moved. Supposedly these people were living, they didn't have any technology. I personally think that maybe they're not telling people how it really is, but I think at some point, so here we are, we're this highly technological people right now. We're living in this time of technology. What if something just came along and completely wiped everything out? And maybe life starts over. And in 2,000 years, 5,000 years, another civilization starts. 2,000 years after that, they're right where we are. Maybe this has happened several times. I don't know. Maybe at some point on this planet, there was a highly advanced civilization, maybe more technologically advanced than us. I mean, I don't know. It's possible.
Right.
And they were all wiped out. Maybe the earth went through something so traumatic that it just wiped the slate clean. I mean, I don't know. And people started over, but maybe some of these people survived. Maybe they're from a parallel dimension. Maybe they're from a different planet. I mean, you could go so many different
Like I'm
directions.
saying, you get into one thing, and then there's
Oh,
like
it's a
20 other
wormhole.
things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but there's no proof of any of it, and you can't lock any of it down and say, yeah, this is what it is. This is where they're from. Oh, they're from it, the Orion star system. They're from Venus. They're from Jupiter. I don't know. I mean,
Right.
there's a lot of goofballs out there. Trust me. I think during the UFO flap after in the 50s, a lot of people were coming forward and saying they were talking to aliens, and it all kind of took off, you know.
Right. All the
Sci-fi
guys with the
really,
colanders on their heads.
Yeah.
science
Foil.
fiction really had a jump in the 50s. and
Yeah,
60s. So everyone jumped on the
that's-
bandwagon.
I went to the
Excuse me.
store and I bought a box. I was gonna
Foil?
make a tinfoil hat so I could put it back here on the shelf.
Oh God.
Yeah, I'm gonna make a big tinfoil hat. Yeah,
Kenny's
there you
got
go.
his.
I was gonna put a big like swirl on mine. I was gonna
Oh
put
my
it up here
God,
because
you
I have
guys
a
are
UFO.
funny.
You know, I've got an alien head up here. I've got all kinds of.
It's
So yeah,
funny.
I'm missing the tinfoil hat, so I figured I better hurry up and make one.
You better get one of those. See,
I
Kenny's
will
ahead of the
say,
game.
well, I mean, I have a full collection. This is my office at work, so I
Oh, that's
have
cool.
I have display cases and stuff outside of this office that have like stuff from alleged UFO pictures and crashes and ghosts and haunted dolls that aren't really haunted.
Oh boy.
I got a ton of stuff out there, but
Uh-huh.
a few things I just want to touch on. One, I did send a message. I got to bail in a couple minutes. I apologize. But when it comes to ancient civilizations moving the stones, the hundreds of tons and stuff like that, it has been shown how it can be done by humans with low tech, just what they had at the time. So it's been shown over and over again. So that is something that can be researched and looked up.
Right.
And when it comes to a lot of these ideas, and I hesitate to call them theories, more like hypotheses of ancient aliens and stuff like that. I really believe this started with von Däniken and his books.
Eric von Däniken.
Yeah. Chariots of the Gods and stuff like
Sure.
that came out and just put a spin on it pretty much made an alternate history. It put a spin on the history that we do know, and put these ideas out there, and they had plenty of shows, you know, people jumped on them like Unsolved Mysteries and stuff. Would love this kind of stuff. And again, I grew up with Unsolved Mysteries. I love that show. I watched it.
Me too.
I mean, we know, like, when that was on, you had to be in front of that TV
Exactly.
to see that every
Well, you
week.
only had like 5 channels.
That's
so.
it. Yeah.
It was
So, and I grew up on that too. I loved it. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff that has its origins in that, like von Däniken, you know, like he really originated. We didn't really.
That was
Many
Chariots
of
of the
his stories
Gods.
weren't original. He borrowed from a lot of previous writers, and I mean, there's a lot of issues with those stories. But when it comes to all these, again, it comes back to speculations. And I want to say that I do like the fact that you said like all these things, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't
that's,
know.
That's good,
Right.
because I mean, I do see a lot of people that say, well, it could be this, it could be that, and then leave it, you know, and leave their audience. I've actually seen people get up on stage and talk and present those kind of ideas as fact. And
No,
then,
I think that's dangerous.
is
Without proof,
dangerous.
I'll agree with you with. If you don't have proof, that's dangerous. You can throw around, you know, your theories and statements regarding those mysteries. You could try to press a strong hypothesis, which is an educated guess. But I mean, you could throw around theories and statements, sure, all day. Without proof, I think it's dangerous to say yes, this is actually fact.
Right.
I don't know how you do that. I do know
Well,
that I firmly
Well,
believe
as
that
far as
there's
this goes, yeah, the
there's
money
just a lot
costs,
of
yeah.
really, I think in my eyes, a lot of really credible people that have told some pretty incredible things. But I also have to say, gee, you know, I mean, why would they lie? I don't know.
Plenty
Just
of
be-
reasons. I mean, and I get it. I understand.
And then again, okay, let's say a couple of them would they all lie? I mean, that's what it boils down to. It's like,
it's
is
not.
everybody lying? I just
I
don't
don't think
believe
it
that.
comes down to everyone's lying. I mean, I think some are. I definitely think some are just outright.
People have come
telling
forward and
tales.
tell their stories, and suddenly they wind up dead.
But
I mean, I don't know how to explain it. You know, they're shot in the back of the head. They're thrown out of windows. There's a lot of weird things that seem to happen.
There's
well,
too
I
much.
mean, that again, that's like a case by case. We'd have to look into
Yeah.
each case and actually verify that it had some kind of sinister ending and reason and stuff like that. But I totally lost my thought here. I totally had a brain fart. I'm sorry. So many thoughts going through my head at the
That's what
same
it is. See,
time.
you got one thing you're saying, but there's 20 or 30 other things
Yeah.
that are
Oh,
in with it.
so yeah, there's not.
Well,
I
this whole
don't say
field
that
is an endless wormhole.
not
Yeah.
everyone is lying. And as I said, I think some people are, and watching their testimony, I think they are fabricating stories. But I do think the majority are most likely, and this is just my opinion, most likely misidentification or making mistakes or making reports. Because I mean, when I go through like the MUFON reporting, I used to go through and read all the reports that people submit to them, and some of them are just like, I saw a light in the sky. Like that's it. That's the description. So I think there's a lot of misidentification. I think there's like wishful thinking going on, but not necessarily lying. I want to make that clear. I don't think everyone is lying, but I think some are. But on that note, it was a pleasure. I do have to get
Very
going.
nice talking to you.
It was very nice talking to you too, sir. It was a good conversation, a respectful conversation. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And thank you for having me on. I appreciate
loved it.
And
You'll come on again.
I will. I would love to come on again because this was a very nice conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, good. I'm glad. And we really are glad that you came on and, Oh,
Yeah,
before you go, how was the movie?
If you're hiring, let me know.
The movie, I don't want to give any spoilers, but I will say that
Did you
was
like
okay.
It was okay.
What movie is that? Real quick?
Ghostbusters.
The Ghostbusters movie.
Yeah.
Wait, which one?
The
one
latest
with-
one that just released.
Oh,
Yeah.
they just. I see. I didn't even know
Just
one was
released
coming. The
one,
last
yeah.
one I heard was just. It was all female Ghostbusters. That's the last one I know of.
Oh, that's two movies ago.
Oh boy.
I didn't even know about that.
Dan
Yeah.
Aykroyd's on a roll, huh?
Yeah, it's just it was okay. I'll watch it again when it comes out on like streaming, but
I'm afraid they're going to turn out like Jaws.
Oh, God.
yeah.
I can understand one, maybe two, but then when it's like Jaws' grandmother, Jaws' cousin, Jaws 3D, I was like, okay, this is getting really stupid.
Oh,
All
fantastic.
right, guys.
Seen it.
All right,
see you later.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Kenny.
Interesting.
Oh, so that was just incredible. I knew you guys would have one hell of a conversation.
Well, he's right. Incredible. What is it? Incredible statements require incredible proof.
Yeah.
There's no real proof. I mean, but like I was saying, there's something for me. It holds a lot of water when I see full-on colonels, generals, people that do have a lot to lose, a lot of credibility to lose, come forward, and some of these people are extremely passionate. Some people giving their testimony cry. They're like, this is wrong. They shouldn't be hiding this technology from the world. They truly, honestly believe what they're saying, and they're willing to go in front of the whole world to tell their story. I think that holds water. And these people are like, they'll strip tell you, I got nothing to gain by this. I'm not making any money. If anything, I think those are the people that they very easily could be the ones walking through the grocery store and people could ridicule and make fun of them. Maybe a company won't hire them because they think they're a nut job for what they believe. So yeah, they do have a lot to lose. I think some of these people.
Yeah, some of them do. Yeah, I do. Because the minute you tell somebody like well, we've gone through that with just a paranormal investigating.
Sure, but
you say that you're a paranormal investigator and they look at you like you're a nut job.
I mean, a lot of tapes have been released from the space station of things flying by. Astronauts have come forward to give testimony. There's just a lot of
saw a video, Kurt Russell, which I didn't know was a pilot, and his wife brought up a video talk online about a pilot back in the day saw this thing in the sky, and they said the only evidence they have is the pilot's report. And Kurt Russell goes, "That's me talking about."
That was a Phoenix Lights.
Is that what that was?
Yeah, he was flying into Phoenix that night.
All right, yeah, because he said he had
his son had a girlfriend here, I guess, that lived in Phoenix, and he was flying. He flew him here on his private plane. Kurt Russell was flying his son here, and reported these lights. Yeah, he's the one that called in and reported them. He's the one that saw them.
Yeah, I just saw that today because, like I said, I've been I've been looking at all kinds of videos and reading stuff, and like I said, a lot of that stuff with that Bob Lazar come up, and I looked at all of that, and I'm thinking, okay, let me ask questions about that.
A lot of people have run him through the ringer through over the years, and Bob himself, there was a really good documentary that I think it might still be on Netflix. I'll send you a link. It's just called Lazar, and it's a
Right?
recent one they made. And for whatever reason, the government is still up this guy's butt. I mean,
Yes.
they really are. And Bob's like, look, I wish I would have never said anything. If anything, this has ruined my life. And he even says, he's like, I haven't made any money off this.
Right.
Uh, and a lot of the things he said, or a lot of the claims he made, as time goes by, he's being proven right. So
Yes, I did see that about that,
they
an
talked
interview
to
he
him,
did with
there's people that
somebody.
have picked his story apart. Okay, when you went to S4, he told the story of putting his hand in this device. It was a security device that measured the bone density in your hand. So you imagine, like, my job, I have a badge. So I put it on the door. It goes, for if I'm cleared for that area, it goes click, the door opens, I go in. If I'm not cleared, it won't open. So
Right.
I have a badge that I carry with me around work. He claims that this security device you'd put your hand on it. It was some kind of table, and it had these little needles that stuck up, and it would measure your bone density. It was like more bulletproof than, let's say, fingerprint. This is back in the day. So you're talking
Right.
years and years ago. Well, people were like, that doesn't exist. That's not real. Well, come to find out, years later, some of this stuff, some of these technologies were released to the public, and sure enough, there's this stupid machine. And this guy shows
Yeah.
Bob in the documentary. He goes, do you recognize this? And he goes, holy cow, I've been looking for pictures of this for years. This is exactly what it was so it seems like a lot of the things that he talks about are coming to fruition.
Are popping
And
up, right.
Kenny brought up Element 115. Of course, it's predicted, but some of the ways that he describes how these things work, um, now there's video coming out that you look at some of these UFOs, and that seems like that's exactly how they work. They have these gravity generators, supposedly, and what they do, they don't propel themselves; they're pulled. They pick a point in space, and it locks in. And the UFOs are usually drawn towards it. They're not propelling themselves towards something. It's
Right, right,
like a
yeah, 'cause
rubber
that's what I
band,
read.
If this is the
Um,
point that you're at, it creates this, and then
that
you just,
gravity wave.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, that's what I
it's
read, but that's why I wanted Kenny on because I love the way he does things. And I don't know if you noticed, you're doing a show with him, he's writing stuff down,
yeah, and he's
and
looking
then
things up.
he'll
I
look
think
it
that's
up
very
because
important.
that's what he does. I mean, he'll pick something apart to
I
to
just, I'm,
prove that it's
I,
right.
it's hard when you talk to a diehard skeptical person. I'm more open-minded to that because I do agree, extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof. But at the same time, I can't just put a blanket over everybody that has a testimony or a story about something and say, well, either they made it up, it wasn't what they saw, or they're just straight up a liar. I can't do that. It
Right,
just
yeah, well, there's a lot of everybody has their way, but like I said, I love the way he does it because I mean, he's not calling out and calling anybody a liar, but he's just letting you know that he's gonna research it and he's gonna go all the way back into it. And I
yeah.
love it that he's that detailed
I just think
in
with
his findings.
anything, you could pull almost anything apart. I think I don't. It doesn't matter what it is. You could probably pick something apart somewhere,
Sure.
something. And if a person has a testimony that they gave 30, 40 years ago, well, I mean, I can't tell you 30 years ago. I could tell you a story. Some of the details might become fuzzy over the years. I mean,
I know.
so of course my story might change a little bit, but it doesn't make it untrue,
No, no, that's true too. That's true too.
But a lot of the things that Bob Lazar did talk about, there's been other people that have been out to S4 in Area 51 that describe a lot of the things that Bob described. I'm not talking necessarily the UFO part, but when Bob, there's people that say, okay, describe the mess hall, describe this, describe that. He was able to perfectly describe these places on the base, what they
Right.
look like inside, and people that have worked there have come forward and said, no, he's right about that. That's exactly how this or that worked. There was another guy that came forward that talked about, God, what's his name? It spaces me. The guy's really smart. Anyway, he was when he was a young boy, he was really into rocketry, but he was extremely smart. So he was getting himself into science competitions and whatnot, and he developed this rocket that took off, and he made it out of some highly advanced kind of propulsion he used. I can't tell you off the top of my head. I'd have to look it up. I could send you the video of his testimony, but he was approached by two people in the government, a couple suits, and they said,
Right.
hey, would you be willing to launch your rocket at this other location? No, he said, sure. So he talks about how he had a military escort at the airport. They put him on a plane, flew him and his father out to this place out in the desert, which he later found out was Groom Lake, Area 51. He set up his rocket, and they said, could you put it down anywhere you wanted? And he said, sure. So they gave him a grid location. Sure enough, he launched his rocket, and it landed right or it came down in the general area that they wanted him to put it down. Well, they're like, this kid, he's kind of like, what's the word I'm looking for? When people are highly functional, but they're autistic, so they're extremely smart.
Yes.
That's like this guy. So they're like, hey, we want you to look at something. They put him on a golf cart, and they drive on this golf cart. He said it's one guy in a suit and another in a general, and they drive into a hangar. Well, the ropes come up, and then the whole floor just starts going down like a giant elevator, and in the hangar, which is kind of like an aircraft carrier. So it's not hard to believe that's what aircraft carriers do. I don't know if you ever seen. You see the flight deck with all the planes, but
Right.
they'll put the plane on one part and it'll go down.
Drop down. Yeah.
And then the planes are all stored underneath the deck. So there's many more planes underneath the deck than what you see on the surface. So this base is kind of like that. It's an underground facility. So you take the plane or whatever into the hangar. The safety ropes come up, and all of a sudden the whole floor just starts going down. And he said it went down 5-6 stories, and they. Sorry, I hit the mute button. They drove on
That's
the
all
golf
right.
cart into this different area, and he said there was a plane over here and different top secret things. But they took him into this room where there was this large. He said it was the size of a school bus, and he said it had different colors on it. And they asked him if he could figure it out. So his description was it didn't dawn on him right away. He was looking at it, and he said he noticed as he was climbing around on this thing that it would change color, and he realized that this was a symbiotic motor. So it reacted. They were arguing about something, and as they were arguing, this thing changed color, and he figured out that this thing was more or less connected to people's emotions or their thoughts. And so once he realized that, anyway, he describes this engine down there that they couldn't figure out how it worked. And
Right.
he goes into pretty much a pretty cool detail about his experience there at Groom Lake. Does that make him a liar? See, it's one of those things. It's a guy that has a pretty fascinating story. He just tells his story about
Right.
they wanted him to take a look at some kind of technology and see if he could figure it out because he was an extremely smart
Excuse me.
kid.
Right.
So there's a lot of these kinds of stories. There's a one that was just recently done. It's actually a podcast I was listening to, and these are the people that just testified in front of Congress not too long ago, the Sean Ryan show. I listen to this show all the time. Pretty good show. If you ever go on YouTube, it kind of looks like this.
Right.
Anyway, he's an ex-SEAL, and he talks to a lot of military people, Green Berets, Navy SEALs, CIA people, and he has 3 shows that he did on this subject, and they're extremely fascinating. And the one guy's testimony, the guy is he's a Green Beret or maybe a Navy SEAL. He talks about how he was on a humanitarian mission by the U.S. government to go down to Nicaragua or somewhere like that. They had a huge, massive earthquake or something, and so his platoon was sent down there to help with humanitarian aid. And as they were walking through the jungle, they came around a corner, and here was this huge craft hovering right there in the jungle.
Wow.
And suddenly, him and his platoon were surrounded by about 8 to 10 guys in black uniforms, no insignia, no rank, but he said he absolutely knew they were American soldiers, probably some black beret or whatever. And the way he gives his testimony, that they absolutely knew what they were doing, the way they unloaded their weapons. He tells the whole story about it, and he realized that they were using, this was a faction of our government that was using this technology to smuggle human cargo and whatever else in these craft, and that this craft was ours. But his testimony is, you could tell he gets very passionate about it, and he's really upset, this guy.
Wow.
And it's like, why would this guy make this up? You know, and he testified in front of, he's like,
Oh,
there's a lot of shady things that are going on that our government's doing, and it's not right. And so he wanted to come forward and make this known.
right.
But when he describes his craft, and he's like, they could have easily killed us, but he talks about how they didn't kill him. And when they got back, they were brought into a room for a debriefing and pretty much told, you're never going to talk about this, da 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 da. There's a lot of these kinds of stories of people seeing things or coming across things in the military that they're probably not supposed to see, and later on they're threatened, you know, hey, you're not going to talk about this.
So, yeah, like I said, you don't know. Even like I said, I said my story, you've had your stories, everybody's had their stories.
Sure.
I mean, it's up to people whether they're going to believe them or not.
Yeah, you know, that's
And
the
it's
way
the
the
thing.
world
It's a
works.
wonderful thing about nowadays because we have the internet. So if something does come out, we can research it and
Yeah.
go as far as back as, like Kenny said, the very first story. Because I do agree that things do change as told by a person as time goes on. Like you said, because nobody remembers. Christ, I don't even remember what I did this morning. So
Yeah.
it's that kind of a deal. But it's I've learned a lot doing this because UFOs really aren't my thing. Even though I find it very interesting.
Yeah, I
Um,
find all this, you know, I watch a lot of Bigfoot documentaries, I watch UFO
right.
documentaries, I do a lot of reading and research into the field of ufology, a lot more than ghost hunting. I mean, for a while I got into, obviously I gave my testimony here, what happened to me. That was very real to me. But it's
Right.
hard to explain that to somebody who's completely skeptical. Well, you were feeling this, or you could have been dehydrated, or you could have, I mean, only I know what I went through, you know? It's
Yes.
like one of those things, when you see it, you'll believe it. Or when you feel it or it
Well,
happens
yeah,
to
you
you.
experience it, right?
Yeah.
Like I said, it's because I've always said the same thing about with the paranormal. If I don't consider anybody really an expert in the
No, no,
field.
of course nobody's an
You're
expert.
just an expert in your own experiences
But one
because
of my radio commercials or one of my radio openers, there's a clip in there and it says, when it happens to you, you'll believe. You hear
yes,
a woman say that.
yes,
She was her name was Kim. She was on our team. And it's true. Until you have your own experience, you
there
know,
you're going to be skeptical about it.
of
Things that are
course.
done.
So human nature is to be skeptical. Now there's
Yeah,
people that run around and believe everything they hear.
yeah, oh, yeah,
And
it's
there's a
true.
lot of BS out there in the news. And of course, yes, our government lies to us constantly. But
And
I
YouTube's
don't,
loaded with it.
you know, and now granted the work I do, it's pretty much I do a lot of semiconductor work, but a lot of it I've worked on in the past, a lot of military weapon projects. I can tell you that when Russia says, oh, we have a hypersonic missile, and then it's all over the news where you hear them say, oh, Russia has this hypersonic missile and nothing could stop it, and this and that. And I was kind of laughing. I was thinking to myself, man, we had that 10 years ago.
See, you were in the know.
But there's a lot of things that we have that people wouldn't even believe. We have space-based weapons that use a laser platform. We just have a lot of crazy things that I think would blow people's minds. I really mean that. And that's like Ben Rich when he gave his final speech, when he says, if you can imagine it, we've done it. So, and I believe that. I think, but there's a reason that the government has been able to get as far as they have, and I don't chalk it all up to, well, those pesky Earthlings, they're just so smart they figured it all out. I really believe that we got a hold of some kind of technology or something that jump started us,
Oh yeah.
because we our technological advances over the last probably 20 years especially have just exploded. Whether it's fiber optic cable,
Exactly. Yeah.
there's supposedly voice to skull technology that Raytheon has been messing with for years. That's where they can implant the thought in your head. They can even do it in your own voice, so you think that's your own thoughts telling you to do this or to do that.
Right.
They A lot of scary stuff, and there's a lot of people, and they've weaponized it. These are usually technologies that started off harmless. People wanted to figure things out, but just like in military fashion, anything you think would be good for humanity, the military is going to figure out a way to weaponize it first.
Right. Right. Yeah, they
And
always turn it to the evil side, the dark side.
absolutely.
Um,
So,
and it is, if you think about it, it is kind of scary because, like I said, the more that I dove into this, the research for this chat, it was just like the more I'm finding out, it really is kind of spooky.
sure. Let's say here's a good example. Now, there's people that claim that they've been able to, and I don't have any proof of this. I'm just one of those claims out there that the military has been able to, like how in Star Trek how they transport people.
Right. Yeah, you and I have had this discussion. Yeah.
Yeah, supposedly they have this technology now. They've been able to do it in a lab. Well, instead of the military saying, "Wow, this would be great for humanity. Imagine being able to beam yourself from Arizona to New York to go on vacation, or if a brain surgeon had to be halfway across the planet to do an emergency surgery, he could
Right.
get there instantaneously." But
That would
then
be
you have the
awesome.
military that would get a hold of that technology and say, "Wow, imagine if we could make a nuke appear over a city instantaneously
Exactly. They
without a
see, they
plane."
always turn it ugly.
Yeah,
Of course, I wouldn't volunteer for, any of that until I knew.
what if we could transport, 20,000 soldiers to the front line instantaneously,
Exactly. Yeah.
behind a whole battalion of troops? Or, they always think of a way to militarize it, to
Yeah.
make it a weapon. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of technologies, unfortunately, once they figure out how to weaponize it, it never sees the light of day. And there are technologies that would greatly benefit humanity,
Oh, sure.
like a free energy technology. Now that TR3B, yes, it's mercury that's spun at a high rate of speed, and then it's electrified, and this creates an anti-gravity sort of thing. But just the fact that they've now come forward with that, but it's changed because from what he read. Now, granted, I'm really surprised that they've even put that on the internet now. I was reading Popular Mechanics 10, 15 years ago where they talked about this TR3B, and people were like, that's not real. They don't have anything like that. And here you go.
Yeah.
So
Well, I have a
I
bunch of stuff written down I'm gonna be looking up, so it's
I think to say that the government doesn't have free energy technology is very foolhardy, considering that Nikola Tesla was already experimenting with that. He was building uh, a tower in order to pull energy down. He had already proven that it was absolutely possible, and I guarantee you, we perfected that. I know we have, but they're never going to release that to the public.
no.
At least not right now, because there's too much money to be made. If you came out tomorrow and said, "Hey, we've got a way to pull energy out of the sky to power every single
Yes,
house."
because I do remember research a long time ago, yes, about long time ago, what was it? When they first were playing around with electricity.
Sure. So it's
Um,
like if you
and
if
yeah, they discovered how that they could actually electrify the globe for free.
yeah, do you think they're ever going to make that, give
No,
that to the public?
because that's
No.
what
You would
happened,
run.
that money took over.
Well, of course, because Thomas Edison and all this is why his
Yep,
idea never took off, and nobody
yep,
would finance it because people like Thomas Edison and others had way too much. They looked at it and said, "Man, we can make billions.
yep,
We could charge people for this." It's kind of
yep,
like the military. Wow, we could weaponize this.
yep.
So they don't want to give anything away for free. And now that I mean, when you think how long we've been living with electricity, if you don't think we've made the next leap, oh, we absolutely have. I mean, we're using how old is this technology now? But
Yeah.
they're never going to give it to the public because you're talking about bankrupting the oil and gas company.
Exactly, and that's where the whole problem stems
It would
from.
bankrupt the global economy overnight. Everything would it would collapse.
Yep.
They can't do it. I mean, all your appliances, everything is run off gas. I mean, you're talking about overturning a whole way of life.
Exactly.
It's something that they're going to have to slowly phase in over time, kind of like the electric car market. There was people that were inventing carburetors in the 70s, and that's not even some top secret thing. There was a guy that came out with a dune buggy in the 70s and 80s that claimed he could get over 100 something miles off 1 gallon of gas. People have invented engines that could run off nothing but water,
Exactly. Yep.
that could drive. You don't see those technologies out there now. Recently, there's people that you see hydrogen cars, and now they're saying, oh yeah, we've got ships that can run off hydrogen, uh, forever
And that's what I
energy
heard
kind
that
of
they
thing.
were headed towards. We're headed towards the hydrogen.
But not before we deplete the world of lithium and pollute the atmosphere with lithium
Yeah.
mining and all the slave labor involved, and everybody's got to make a buck out of it. And
It all
the
comes
electric
down to the
car
money.
market is the biggest detriment to the environment, far more than oil, because the biggest thing they're not talking about, and Elon Musk isn't stupid, he knows this, but he's making so
Yep.
much money. Once these batteries become obsolete and they have to be gotten rid of, it's going to create an environmental nightmare.
Exactly.
What are you going to do with all these batteries now?
Exactly.
You're going to bury them? I mean, it's a mess.
Yeah.
So
And it's just the
they've actually
beginning.
got technology that could get us to the next level, but they're not going to give anything away for free. It's just not going to happen.
Oh,
They
it's a
got to have
shame.
they have to figure out a way to monetize everything.
Yeah. And that's when they get rid of money, that's when things will change. But until we can get rid of money, forget it.
Well, the government's
It's
going to
gonna
use
rule the
all these
world.
things. Sure.
So that's then they're
Ratcliffe,
true. It's the root of all evil.
his tower was right there in New York. Was it Ratcliffe Tower? I can't remember the name of Tesla's tower that he was building. You'll have to look that up. Ratcliffe. I can't remember, but yeah, he was building a whole tower out there because he was going to prove to the world, hey, look you can have free energy. And there's people that have proven that it works. One TV show did an experiment. They put these steel beams in the ground, and they were able to make all these lights come on using the energy from the atmosphere. Another guy takes a voltmeter, puts it on a balloon, and sends this balloon way up in the sky. And the higher it goes, the more voltage it was reading. So that right there shows you that there's
Pulling
energy.
the energy out from the atmosphere.
Yeah, and he just wanted to prove that, hey, look, the higher you go, the more there is. And this is what Tesla was working on. He was like, look, you could beam this power all across the planet. And so now it gets into a whole nother dark rabbit hole of the pyramids.
All right.
Because
Actually, wasn't that what they were saying, that they were used as conductors?
Like they were devices. Supposedly there was a large crystal in the top, and they were able to transmit power across the entire planet through these pyramids. There was a guy interviewed on the radio. I can't remember his name. I'm sure I can look it up really quick. He wrote a good book called The Giza Power Plant. And his whole book lays out the argument. Let's see, the Giza Power Plant. Oh, here's an audio book. Anyway, it's very interesting. Christopher Dunn, that was his name. Anyway, he wrote a whole book on how these things were used as power plants.
Right.
And it's also fascinating. But I truly believe that supposedly this is the sixth incarnation of people on this planet. We've been wiped out supposedly
Right.
6 previous times. So it's for some reason humanity seems to be able to rise up to a certain level of technological advancement,
And
and then
screw it all up.
either we're wiped out by something or we wipe
Right.
ourselves out.
Exactly.
I like to think of it as something wipes us out. Some people call it Planet X. Nibiru supposedly flies by the planet every so many thousands of years, and when it does, it just pretty much wipes everything out. I don't know. If we're hit by a big enough comet, it could wipe everything out.
Yikes.
We're hit by
Isn't the Devil's Comet coming through soon?
I don't know. There's a
Or
lot
did
of
we miss
fishy
it already?
stuff going on with this solar eclipse that's coming.
I think it's at the same time the eclipse is happening as when the Devil's Comet is passing through.
But did you hear about all the weird stuff going on with this eclipse?
I know. What is the big beef?
I posted something on my page. I'm sure I could play it really quick. I was like, well, what's up with this? Let me see if I can. I'm sure I could play it here. I have to turn up my volume. Now, listen to this. Now, this is in Texas, but you got to scratch your head and be like, what's that all about?
Guard is going to be here now for the solar eclipse. This article today was released in an Oklahoma newspaper saying that they will have guardsmen present in McCurtain County for the solar eclipse. But things get much weirder. The 22 members of an elite chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear unit will be housed in Broken Bow, in addition to 110 to 150 Oklahoma Highway Patrol troopers. They're also urging residents to stock up with 1 to 2 weeks of food in advance of the event and to have full fuel tanks. They're also saying that it's likely that communication facilities could be overloaded, possibly making it difficult to make cell phone calls. Similar warnings are going out in different states, including Noblesville Fire Department in Texas. And apparently schools are canceled this day, and people are going on Twitter writing statements like this: something strange is definitely happening. My kids in 3 different schools all got notices that school will be closed that day. What do you know about this solar eclipse? As always, let me know what
I
you
did
think
hear that about schools.
But
What
so
the
there's I don't know. There's something weird going on. It all boils down to preparedness, I guess. I think every person should be somewhat prepared just for anything.
Just in case.
You just never know. If we were hit by an EMP, anything like that, the best way to kind of wake somebody up is you give them a scenario. Okay, you're supposed to get up in the morning. You wake up and you realize, oh my gosh, my alarm clock's not working. So you jump out of bed. You think, oh, I'm late for work. You go to grab your phone. Well, your phone's not working. Oh, you go to turn on the water in your shower. The water doesn't work. You're like, what is going on? And then you somewhat get dressed. You go out, your car won't start. And you're thinking, what the hell is going on? Same time, other people are out in the street walking around like, what's going on? None of the power's working. At that moment, perhaps we were hit with an EMP. If that's the case, the power could be out for 6 months, a year.
Yeah.
At that moment, what do you have in your house to survive on? That's what you got to think about.
Right.
If suddenly your water doesn't work because it's powered by, unless you're on your own well somehow, and you can manually pump it up. But most wells are, used electricity powers your well. So do you have enough water? Do you have enough food? How long till you run out of food? Whatever you have in your house is what you have to live on.
Right.
And it doesn't take long for people to get desperate and stupid. And, maybe your neighbor has 3 kids, and I guarantee you, he's not going to sit there and watch his kids starve to death.
Right. That's when fear takes over.
He's going to try to come take what you have. And if somebody's starving to death, they will eat your dog. I'm telling you, people get really desperate. The average human being can live 30 days without food, but they can't survive 5 days without water. So I don't know. I hear things like this. I also hear, I listened to an interview the other day with this, she is a CIA analyst on that same Sean Ryan show. And she talks about, he's like, you think any terrorists are coming over our border? And she flat out says, oh, they are. They know of several Afghanis.
That's the reason for the military.
Well, they know of several different Afghanistan Al-Qaeda members and whatnot that have all applied for visas to get them as far as the United States border. So
yeah,
they've already predicted that it's not even a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. They all say that these people are all in our country already.
Here we go again.
Something's going on. It's so it behooves you to be prepared. But I don't know. We're living in very interesting times. This is the truth.
It's scary. Oh, that's scary.
And it seems like everything's kind of coming out now. Whether it be the UFO discussion or it's just all I think everybody can feel something's not right. Everybody's kind of on edge. Something.
Yeah,
Everybody feels something's going on, but they just
something is
don't
just
know
yeah,
exactly
it's just not
what.
right. Well, I always told my husband, I says, "Well, if the shit ever hits the fan, we're hooking up the camper and heading for the mountains."
If the car starts,
It's
that's what
true,
I'm
as
saying.
if the car starts.
So what happens if you get out there and it doesn't start? You're stuck.
Well, no, not stuck. When there's a will, there's a way. We'll get there.
And then, you go online, they make these things, they're called EMP Shield. You can install it in your vehicle, supposedly protect your vehicle from an EMP attack. And I don't know. There's a lot of people making an awful lot of money on all this stuff right now, whether it be survival food,
And not for
you
nothing, I
name
mean,
it.
hopefully it's all just again, just the craziness of the human species and everything will be fine. And
But
because
never
we always,
underestimate the power of
yeah,
stupid people in large groups. That's
we,
true.
we always go to the extreme when something isn't the norm.
Yeah, well, I think there's a good reason to be somewhat prepared, when you look at
Oh
what's going
yeah,
on in Ukraine and Russia, and these aren't really they're not great times. The economy is suffering, tens of thousands of people hundreds of thousands of people pouring over our border. We don't know who they are.
yeah,
It's just a recipe for disaster. Something at some point is going to happen. I
something's
don't know
yeah,
what it is, but yeah, I guess the threat. We have a threat level in this country. They assess how big of a threat we're at. 1 to 5. Like DEFCON
right.
levels, and they pretty much said that we're the possibility of us having a terrorist attack isn't even a threat anymore. It's an absolute, and they just said it's not even a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. They
When
just don't know
pretty
where.
much, yeah, pretty much.
And
Well, it has
what?
been a great show, Kale.
Yeah, I know. I don't want to talk about all this stuff.
Great chat. I hope everybody enjoyed it. They've been so quiet. Like I said, this hasn't been the normal topic that we usually do, and I did enjoy it. I enjoyed having Kenny on. I enjoyed the debate. It was fantastic.
Yep.
And of course, we will do it again. We're always going to change it up, try to keep it interesting. But until then, everybody, I hope you have a great night. And remember, always you can join us on the Raw side. Until then, everybody have a great night.
See ya.